Your TV does not need a hidden camera to know too much. If it is connected, your habits, your household, and sometimes your private screen activity can become somebody else's product. Stay with me, because once you see how this system works, you will never look at a living room screen the same way again. Most people still think a television is passive, a screen, a speaker, a harmless rectangle on the wall, but the modern smart TV is closer to a behavioral sensor wrapped in glass. It does not just deliver entertainment. It can measure what passes across that panel, connect that signal to a device, tie that device to a network, and feed the result into an advertising system most buyers never consciously agreed to join. That is the real story here. Not science fiction, a business model. And the reason this deserves your attention right now is simple. In December 2025, the Texas Attorney General announced lawsuits against Sony, Samsung, LG, Hisense, and TCL, alleging that their smart TVs used automated content recognition, or ACR, to secretly monitor what people watched and to profit from that surveillance. In the Samsung petition, Texas alleged the system captured audio and video as often as every 500 milliseconds and could identify content from streaming apps, connected devices, AirPlay, Google Cast, and HDMI inputs. Even if those allegations still have to be proved in court, they show how seriously regulators now view the television in your living room. Think about what that means. This is not just about the movie you streamed on Friday night. It is about whether the device in the center of your home can observe patterns that say far more than a title ever could. What channels come on every morning? Which political clips run late at night? Whether kids programming appears every afternoon, whether a security camera feed is displayed, whether a phone was mirrored to the screen. A machine does not need to understand your life the way a human does. It only needs enough signals to sort you, score you, and sell access to the category you fall into. That is why the cheap TV story deserves a second look. People saw larger screens get cheaper and assumed manufacturing simply became more efficient. Some of it did, but the more important change was economic. Television makers learned that the profit was not limited to the one-time sale of hardware. If a company can keep earning from your viewing behavior, ad responsiveness, and household profile, the television stops being just a product. It becomes a subsidized entry point into a longer relationship you never meaningfully negotiated. And that relationship begins at setup. You unbox the screen, you connect Wi-Fi. You click through terms designed to be accepted, not understood. The wording is broad, the menus are rushed, and the privacy trade-offs are buried under language like personalization, recommendations, or enhanced features. That is how a lot of modern surveillance works, not through force, but through fatigue. By the time the show starts, the consent has already been harvested. What makes the television especially powerful is where it lives. Your browser shows fragments of you. Your phone shows one person at a time. But the TV often sits in shared space, watching collective behavior. It can reveal who is home, what generations live together, what kind of news the household absorbs, when the room goes quiet, and what content reliably pulls attention. That makes it extraordinarily useful for profiling because it does not just measure a user, it measures a domestic environment. Once you understand that, the real question changes. It is no longer, is my TV collecting something? Of course it is collecting something. The real question is, how much is that data worth once it leaves my home? Because once behavior becomes inventory, your privacy is no longer a boundary. It is raw material. And to see how this moved from suspicion into documented commercial practice, you have to look at what federal regulators already caught years ago. That earlier case is what destroys the comforting excuse that this is all overblown. In 2017, the Federal Trade Commission in New Jersey announced a settlement with Vizio after alleging that the company collected viewing histories from 11 million smart TVs without consumers' knowledge or consent. The FTC said Vizio's software captured second-by-second information about video displayed on the screen, including content from cable, broadband, set-top boxes, DVD players, over-the-air broadcasts, and streaming devices. The agencies also said Vizio sold this data to third parties and facilitated the appending of demographic information like age, income, marital status, household size, education, and home ownership. That is not a misunderstanding. That is a pipeline from living room behavior to monetized profile. Read that carefully and the incentive structure becomes obvious. The business is not merely to know what show is on. The business is to translate viewing behavior into something legible to advertisers, data brokers, analytics firms, and platform partners. What was watched, when it was watched, for how long, on which device, in which household cluster. Once data reaches that stage, the TV is no longer functioning like a traditional appliance. It is functioning like a sensor endpoint inside the home. This is where consumers get misled. People hear tracking and imagine a few harmless recommendations. But a recommendation engine is only the polite front end. Behind it is inference. If a household regularly watches retirement programming, high-end travel ads, and market news, what can be inferred about income and age? If one screen repeatedly cycles through fertility clinics, oncology explainers, or addiction recovery content, what sensitive interests might be suggested? If every evening ends with the same ideological channels or religious programming, what can a data model conclude about political or spiritual alignment? A television does not need to know your name in plain text to become dangerous. It only needs a persistent pattern that can be linked, matched, and resold. And the danger is not limited to advertising. The more richly a company maps households, the more attractive that dataset becomes to anyone who wants leverage. Maybe that means a broker enriching other consumer files. Maybe it means a hostile actor looking for exposed data after a breach. The point is not that every smart TV company is leaking blackmail material tomorrow morning. The point is that once private behavior is copied, stored, and distributed across multiple entities, your risk stops being controlled by your own caution. It becomes dependent on the security and restraint of every party in the chain. There is another misconception that needs to die here. Many viewers assume the TV only knows about whatever is watched through the manufacturer's own apps. But the Vizio case described data collection from external devices. The recent Texas allegations go further, describing recognition across streaming apps, HDMI devices, casting systems, and even security or doorbell camera streams shown on a TV. Now pause there. If a screen recognition system is matching signatures from whatever appears on the panel, then the line between television content and my private screen activity gets dangerously thin. That is the hidden angle almost nobody thinks through. Cast a family photo album to the television, mirror a phone video, pull up a laptop presentation through HDMI, open a doorbell feed on the big screen. In the consumer's mind, those are private actions happening inside the home. In a recognition system's logic, they may simply be more signals to inspect or process. Even when a company says it does not identify every kind of private content, the architecture itself should make you uneasy. Once the device is built to sample what is on the screen, the burden shifts to the company to prove where collection stops and who verifies that claim. Now let's talk about audio, because this is where people either get sloppy or hysterical. The credible position is neither. Not every television is constantly recording the room in the most dramatic sense people imagine. But voice features do create another channel of data collection, and the official policies say so in black and white. Samsung's own Smart TV privacy supplement states that if you enable voice recognition, some voice commands may be transmitted with device information to a third-party service provider, and it warns that if your spoken words include personal or sensitive information, that information will be among the data captured and transmitted. That is not a rumor from a forum. That is the manufacturer describing the feature. And notice the design logic. If you want voice convenience, you may have to accept collection you would reject if it were described more plainly. If you disable it, you lose features. If you leave it enabled, you accept a risk surface most people never map out. This is the privacy trap built into modern consumer technology. Convenience is immediate, while exposure is abstract. The button works now. The consequence is delayed, invisible, and easy to discount. The same pattern shows up in labels like smart interactivity, personalized recommendations, or interactive marketing. These phrases sound trivial, but regulatory records show that soft language can sit on top of extremely aggressive data practices. A person who sees program suggestions does not imagine household-level behavioral tracking across devices. A person who sees interactive marketing does not picture their screen activity feeding external measurement systems. Language is not neutral here. Language is part of the mechanism. So what do you do with all of this? You do not panic. You audit the device like any other networked machine that lives inside your home. You assume defaults were designed for the manufacturer, not for you. You assume the friendliest labels may hide the most important switches, and you move from vague discomfort to specific control. Start with the simplest rule. If a privacy feature sounds optional, check whether the data collection behind it is optional too. On most major smart TV brands, the relevant controls are buried under menus labeled privacy, terms, user agreements, advertising, voice, or viewing information. The exact wording varies by model year and software version, so do not get hung up on a perfect one-to-one menu match. What matters is that you deliberately search for the categories the industry keeps returning to: ACR, Samba, smart interactivity, viewing information, personalized recommendations, interest-based ads, limit ad tracking, reset advertising ID, voice recognition, microphone permissions, and data deletion. If you own an LG set, open the Privacy and Terms area and look for options related to selling personal information, ad tracking, viewing information, voice information, and app permissions. If the television offers a way to reset the advertising ID or delete stored viewing or voice data, use it. If a warning appears telling you some convenience may be reduced, understand what that warning really is, not a security notice, but a pressure tactic. If you own a Sony set, look specifically for Samba or Samba Interactive TV and Network, Preferences, or Interactive TV Settings. If you own a Samsung set, go straight to the Smart TV Privacy Settings and look for Viewing Information Collection, Personalized Recommendations, Interactive Marketing, Interest-Based Advertising, and Voice Recognition. If you own a Hisense or TCL television, search for device usage data, app and over-the-air usage collection, user agreements, privacy choices, ad settings, and anything that mentions recommendations or improved services. Do not assume a lower-cost set means lower-grade surveillance. In this market, the opposite can be true. Then move beyond the TV itself. Ask a harder question. Does this device need open internet access all the time? If you mainly use the set for cable, broadcast, or an external player, consider putting it on a separate guest network or restricting its connectivity at the router. That is not paranoia. That is network hygiene. A television cannot transmit what it cannot reach. And if you want the cleanest long-term solution, the safest screen is still the one that is just a display, not a data platform dressed up as a display. And do not make the common mistake of checking these settings once and assuming the job is done. Smart TVs update, menus change. New terms appear after firmware upgrades, app installations, account logins, or factory resets. A feature you disabled in January can quietly return under a different name by summer. Privacy on these devices is not a one-time decision, it is maintenance. This is where the academic research becomes unusually useful. A recent study on smart TV ACR found 2 points that matter to ordinary people. First, ACR can operate even when the television is used through HDMI, like a basic monitor. Second, opting out stops the relevant ACR traffic. That means 2 protective moves are grounded in evidence, not folklore. 1. Do not assume an external device makes the television blind. 2. Do not assume the privacy settings are meaningless. In this case, the research suggests the opt-out can materially reduce the tracking pipeline. There is also a deeper lesson here about consumer technology more broadly. When a product becomes cheaper, more connected, and more aggressively personalized at the same time, you should immediately ask what invisible subsidy is making that experience possible. Sometimes the answer is scale. Very often the answer is you, your attention, your preferences, your routines, your household structure, your responsiveness to certain messages. Lawsuits matter, enforcement matters, official scrutiny matters. But none of those things reach into your living room tonight and change a setting for you. Cases drag on. Policies evolve slowly. Companies rename features faster than most people can follow. Your protection begins earlier than any judgment ever will. It begins the moment you stop treating setup screens as housekeeping and start treating them as negotiations. So do this once and do it carefully. Open every privacy menu on every smart TV in your home. Disable content recognition. Disable ad personalization where possible. Disable voice collection if you do not need it. Reset the advertising ID. Delete stored viewing or voice history when the option exists. Recheck after software updates. And if other people use the television, explain why the 5 minutes you spend in those menus may be worth far more than the discount you got at checkout. Because the real threat is not that a television exists. The real threat is that a surveillance feature can live inside an ordinary object for years without ever feeling like surveillance at all. That is how people lose control now, quietly, conveniently, by mistaking a setting screen for a formality. Do not make that mistake. Audit the screen, cut off what you can, and make the device in your home work for you, not on you.